Hey friends, this is Dr. J, and I am recording this unedited, live recording, outside in South Africa at the Pinda Game Reserve. And here, this is actually where I'm staying, and just yesterday an elephant came to visit me in this exact location. And so I'm a little bit cautious that something may appear while I'm recording this, but probably with all my talking, nothing will appear at all. Now, I'm in South Africa because I'm traveling with a group of people that I have brought here to explore the incredible way that life teaches us how to live. And we're doing that through wildlife safari, through hands-on conservation experiences, through experiences of traditional Zulu culture, and also just through the power of a small group journey, processing and exploring these things together. But at the heart of our spiritual work is the reclaiming of four core concepts. I mean, they're not really concepts, because when you live these things, they are simply aspects of reality. When you don't live these things, they are beliefs that you might consider embracing. But I would argue that these are four lost facets or foundations of our world. You might also see these things as four core foundations of the indigenous worldview. Now, when we go through these, you'll see that they are also common to most of the world's religious and spiritual traditions. However, the way they are presented, I would argue that in the indigenous world, what's different is that they are fundamental foundations to every aspect of life. So these are essential to worldview, whereas in the Western world, somehow, remarkably, we have pulled these four principles out of our worldview. We have pulled these four principles out of our lives, even if we are religious or we're involved in religious community or we have a spiritual life. The first of the four is the simple understanding that you are a soul. You are a soul. The second is that the spirit world is real. The third is that wilderness, nature, wildlife, nature is metaphysical. And the fourth is that ceremony is a way of life. So the four foundations are: you are a soul, the spirit world is real, nature is metaphysical, and ceremony is a way of life. So let's go a little deeper into these tenets and see where it takes us. To know that you are a soul is to know that everything you experience in your human life is happening in a greater container, a greater context. And more than that, that your human life is not what you are, but it is something you are going through. So if you see yourself as human life first, then you might say, I have a soul. Or you might even say, I don't believe in the soul. But when you understand that you are a soul, then that becomes the first foundation of every decision, the way you process every reaction, the way you make every choice, and how you understand what's going on in the world around you. I am a soul first. So, you could have a job, you could be a parent, you could be dealing with physical illness, you could be having wonderful or terrible things happening to you right now. And the soul asks, how can I learn? How can I love? How can I help? And what does it mean to embrace this fully? So there's 4 aspects of soul work. Being a soul. You're here to learn, you're here to love, you're here to help, and you're here to experience whatever it is you're experiencing. Now that might sound a little bit self-evident or obvious, but it's not, because so many of us spend so much of our life pushing away our experiences. We resist what we are going through. We resist what we are given. We resist who we are and what we have. So authenticity becomes difficult. Embracing life becomes difficult, and we lose touch with all the ways that life nourishes us. We lose touch with all the ways we can be enriched and grow just by paying attention to the present moment and what it has to teach us. You are a soul, and that means you are here to learn from every experience, to love more through every experience, to question how you might serve within every experience, and to accept, embrace, and integrate all these elements of everyday life. The second principle is a bigger jump for most people, and that is to simply accept that the spirit world is real. Now, what's a little bit crazy about this principle is that I would argue that most of us have an unconscious inner tension or division when it comes to this topic. What that means is that we live in a world that doesn't really believe this, that doesn't affirm this, that doesn't reward, nurture, or give approval to this. And yet, I would argue that most of us have had experiences that point us in the direction or into the idea, into the realization that there is more to the world than what meets the eye. If we are souls, then we live in a universe of souls, both in bodies and beyond the body. And that's where we begin to open our hearts and minds to a spiritual world, a world in which wildlife has a soul, a world in which nature, that trees and the water has a soul. To understand that the spirit world is real is also to live in the context, in the healthy, nurturing context of past and future, rather than being distractions and regrets and sources of fear. The past becomes a place of self-understanding, a way to be connected to all of not only our ancestors, but all life and all creation. And the future becomes the opportunity, the window, the mirror through which we see that we are the future ancestor, that we are living in a moment in which we can choose to be better relatives, choose to leave a better legacy. Believing in the spirit world is anything but a bypass, but an opportunity to open our creative minds, our dream world, our understanding of ourselves in the great continuum of life. Oddly, something that we have made extremely esoteric and something that is considered questionable and at the fringe of our society. Ultimately, embracing the spirit world helps us to be more human, more present, and more powerful. This happens through our humility, through our sense of interconnection, and through our desire to place our priorities and our values and our decision making in a context and world that's bigger than just what we've seen, what we've done, what we know, or for that matter, even what science tells us. Now, I believe in science, absolutely. But one thing we know about the scientific world when we look at true rigorous science is that it is absolutely clear that it does not have all the answers. Does it understand how these trees photosynthesize and derive nourishment from the soil? Of course they do. But does it understand the energy of the universe, the origin of the universe, or the totality of the universe? Not only do we not understand those things through the lens of science, but we find those things harder and harder to understand all the time as we discover worlds of dark matter and dark energy. We realize that mystery is innate to who we are, and that by living in a conscious relationship to the spirit world, we are coming, ironically, into a fuller relationship with ourselves. Now, this takes us into the next principle, which is that nature is metaphysical. Carry the first two principles into the natural world. You are a soul. The spirit world is real. And now we discover the fact that everything in nature around us has its own spiritual dimension. Physical? Yes. Physics? Yes. Biology? Yes. Evolution? Yes. And yet, all these things coexist with another dimension to what nature is. Nature is energy. Nature is consciousness. And through every facet of nature, we have the opportunity to connect more deeply and fully to the soul that we are and the spiritual universe that we live in. This happens through intuition. This happens through symbolism. This happens through the dream world. This happens through the felt sense. And this happens in the unexplainable ways that the spiritual world works through nature to communicate to us, with us, through us. Finally, we have the principle that ceremony is a way of life. And what that means is that if we are going to live as a soul within the spiritual world, acknowledging the metaphysical nature of nature, then we must acquire and use the tools that help us to be in dialogue with this greater reality. And that is what ceremony does for us. Ceremony, just like exercise, nutrition, sleep, ceremony is essential to the human consciousness and human well-being. Ceremony is the intentional way that we invite the contemplation of energy. We invite the interaction with energy. We invite the presence of the spiritual world, and we enter into conscious times and places in which we are quite intentionally operating as a soul first. And so we inhabit a ritual, we inhabit a mythology, we inhabit a meaning framework that liberates us from the contraction of everyday life and opens us to the very purposeful receiving of greater guidance, deeper healing, and further understanding of who and what we are. The miracle of ceremony is not only its incredible practical application for everyday life, but the fact that it's actually an invitation to move beyond the ordinary mind and into spiritual experience as a way of knowing and being. Now, there's a lot more that could be said about each and every one of the principles that I've laid out here, but I'd say this is enough to digest for now. I welcome you to write these principles down, to post them somewhere visible in your everyday life, and consider, what does it mean that you are a soul, that the spirit world is real, that nature is metaphysical, and ceremony is a way of life? How would you change the way you live, the way you love, the way you communicate, and the way you self-protect? Is this a chance to reconsider your identity? Is this a chance to feel a certain kind of freedom as you realize that life is not about control, it's not about safety, it's about remembering our place in the magnificent beauty of this mysterious cosmos, and to really show up as a full, conscious participant. So thank you for joining me here in Africa, and I look forward to sharing more soon.